This is a presentation on opinion of the politician, South African politician named Mr. Julius Malema on Indian racism. Japan and Italy oppose American imperialism. A news item was flashed in the international media of Japan. According to the report, school kids of Japan were reportedly developing preference for using spoon and fork over traditional chopsticks. News item also claimed that school kids preferred pizza and burger over traditional Japanese dishes. The report not only seemed to have alarmed Japanese political circle, but the matter was also seriously discussed in their parliament and prompted their political leadership with full support of the people of Japan to issue a directive to all school authorities to the effect that everything must be done to train school kids to use chopsticks and develop taste for indigenous Chinese dishes. To ensure the success of this directive, all financial aid and social support was assured. The second news item was from Italy. On the same line, Italian government showed a great deal of anxiety regarding an assault on their language. The government of Italy just enacted a law. According to that, no government documents must be allowed to use foreign words, especially English words. Any breach of this law will result in a penalty worth 1 crore 25 lakhs, equivalent of Indian rupees. The importance of this news item is not because of the content, but because of its underlying significance. Note the aggressive stance of the governments of Japan and Italy. Does it reflect any significance of their thought process? Japanese and Italian governments seem to interpret their observations as assaults on their culture and at the core of their nation. Out of this conviction, the whole nation was mobilized to confront this assault. Let us take a listen to the referred news item from Italy.
Soon it would be a punishable offence because Italy has come up with a new law and it is taking linguistic purity to a whole new level. So here's what the law says. You cannot use foreign language words in official documentation, not even English words. And those who don't follow this will face penalties. We're talking about fines up to $109,000. Italy's culture ministry is the new language police. It will monitor the correct use of language and pronunciation. The law has not been passed yet. There will be a parliamentary debate, but it has the support of the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. Those of you watching us from India may remember she was in India last month. Now she's pushing for a language law, and it's not surprising. Meloni has been on a cultural integrity rampage. She's been trying to protect Italy's culture and heritage. Earlier, she backed a ban on synthetic cuisine.
Riteniamo poi che questo fenomeno
Synthetic food does not guarantee the safeguard of our culture and our tradition. Let's say it with pride.
So this is about pride. First the food, now the language. They want to protect it from foreign influence. But the main target of this law is English or Anglo-mania. Excessive admiration for the English language. That's what it is. The draft bill says it quote-unquote demeans and mortifies the Italian language.
The political community of Japan and Italy interpreted this news item as an existing or a prospective assault on their culture and core of their nation. Out of this concern, remedial measures their political leadership undertook have been reported in the excerpt. Now let us neutrally analyze the reaction of India and countries of Southern Asia in similar situation. People of these countries have developed a sense of contempt over their own language, literature, culture, history, tradition, and indulge themselves on slavish imitation of English language and everything that belongs to those whose mother tongue is English. At the same time, the entire generation of these countries are made to feel proud, to treat everything indigenous with contempt. It is not just the language, but imitation of their diet, their ways of life, their gesticulation, even their outward appearance, like color of their eyes, face and skin, are all being imitated. This trend is very deep and widespread. The ruling class of these countries are lovers of everything Anglo-American. Prejudice against black is also deep, widespread, and ingrained in their system. In Indian media, the matrimonial advertisements states, "Convent-educated fair-skinned bride is being sought." Fact is, it is very difficult for a dark-skinned Indian or South Asian girl to get married. The TV serials and commercials of South Asian countries project the image of a society where people are not even brown, but of white skin like the Caucasian. Main figures of all advertisement and TV serials are inevitably projected as very light skin. However, the villains, the beggars, the maids, the workers, peasants, and figures of underclass appear as dark-skinned. I personally interacted with Indian universities administrators. They advised our marketing team. Occasion was an open house for the US-based college at their university campus. The administrators of the host university in India advised us that to ensure better attendance at the open house, we must make sure that all presentations are made by European-looking staff members. Marketing companies in India also advised that messages of commercial hoardings for advertising educational services must be in English instead of local languages. These experiences clearly demonstrate how far advanced are the groundworks for conditioning masses with the concept of white supremacy and self-denigration. This is indulged right at the university level, where the population are supposed to be conditioned to gain self-respect and pride in themselves. Parallel attempt to boost up weaknesses on light-skinned persons is a kind of culture that has evolved over several centuries, and it has taken very deep root in the Indian and South Asian society. A skin lightening product called Fair and Lovely is making billion-dollar business in the South Asian market, which is based on total deception. Few consumers have reported that they rubbed that skin lightening product on the faces of their buffaloes for many years without any sign of skin lightening. These diabolical tricks of conditioning people to boost their senses of white supremacy and self-denigration is being indulged right under the nose of the governments of India and South Asian countries. Such deception of multi-billion dollars is continuing unabated. So-called leaders of the society, whether it is the government or the intellectual circle, they don't even admit any existence of color prejudice in their societies. Such issues are never discussed in any circle of society. India and South Asian nations are putting up with this denigrating culture and are being indulged by the ruling class. Collaborating with them are the international church organizations, Anglo-American information centers, multinational corporations, etc. In the beginning of this presentation, we explained how Japan and Italy reacted to events which they rightly interpreted as assault on their culture. It is interesting to note the difference between the reaction of Japan and Italy versus the reaction of South Asian countries and their governments on similar issues. Both Japan and Italy are rightly convinced that future of their nation depends on the quality of their human resource. When a whole generation of any given nation, instead of being exposed to the knowledge of their indigenous language, literature, history, culture, and tradition, remains exposed to the notion of superiority of others' culture and lifestyle, such exposure inevitably leads to serious impediment in the process of national development and prosperity. During the last 80 years or so, the world has experienced dramatic technological development that the 1.5 billion people of South Asia made no contribution in the revolutionary technological development except as cheap labor. This stagnation or underdevelopment of India and South Asian countries are linked to mainly two factors. First, their education system, which is nothing but scavenging on the leftovers of the Anglo-American West, and is totally irrelevant to the needs of the nation, not suitable for nation building. Second, for a nation to compete and win in the world market requires political will and leadership. Both are dwindling from India and other countries of South Asia. These are some of the factors that explain why the massive human resource of India and South Asia have not made any contribution to the technological development of the world other than as cheap labor. Japan and Italian governments' reaction towards protecting their indigenous culture proves that their leadership is visionary enough to understand that the quality of a nation's human resource improves not by foreign investment or building roads and bridges, but through indigenous schooling that grows out of nation's own culture, tradition, and lifestyle. Education based on scavenging on others' leftover, slavish imitation, flattery, and self-diminution may be good for breeding cheap labor for the foreign markets, but not for nation building. This eternal truth has been conceived and taken to heart by the political leadership of countries like Japan and Italy. This explains why Japan and Italy are what they are, unlike India and South Asian countries that are still ostensibly developing for the last 75 years and will continue that way without making any difference to the ancestral poverty of its 90% non-Anglophone population. Those who need to realize the urgency of protecting indigenous culture, language, and lifestyle for improving the quality of human resources as the essential prerequisite for nation building either do not want to realize or they are intellectually incapable of grasping the urgency of the situation. Another possibility is it's a deliberate plan of action to mentally enslave the entire nation. That fierce, widespread, and pernicious influence of Anglo-American language, culture, and lifestyle is gaining ground spontaneously is a serious misconception. We better understand and accept that a well-planned and well-designed action is in place to re-enslave the vast human resource of India and South Asia to control the vast natural resources of that part of the world. But why? The answer is simple. To fulfill the wishful thinking of Anglo-American West, to contain the China-Russia alliance and win all-round political and economic competition, we better understand that the kind of reaction against supposed assault on the life and culture of Japan and Italy, as reported earlier in this presentation, is common to all developed and prosperous countries of the West, including China and Russia. They realize that building and maintenance of the quality of indigenous human resource is the most important aspect of national development. Rise and fall of a nation is linked to this all-important criterion, the quality of human resource. Let's illustrate this point with an example. It might be of interest to point out that population of both Russia and Bangladesh is about 200 million each. Their international influence differs dramatically because of the difference in the quality of human resources. And why is the difference? In Russia and China, schooling and education is designed with meticulous care to fit their indigenous culture and tradition. In sharp contrast to that of India and South Asian countries, where schooling and education is nothing more than scavenging on the leftovers of Anglo-American West. Differences in the schooling of respective countries explain difference in the international influence between Russia and Bangladesh or India and China. At the start of our presentation, we mentioned how passionately Japan and Italy reacts when they feel their lifestyle and culture is at stake. We have also explained how all aspects of the lifestyle and culture of India and South Asian countries are under severe assault by calculated infiltration of Anglo-American influence, yet political leadership of India and South Asian countries are totally oblivious and apathetic to this menace. Question arises on what is the explanation of the apathetic reaction of South Asian countries as compared to the prompt and decisive reaction of Japan and Italy. It is pertinent to refer to the politics of South Africa, which is intimately linked to what we have narrated so far. The name of Julius Malema, who is an influential, courageous, and highly popular politician in South Africa. It is only a question of time when he might become the president of South Africa. He is extremely vocal and candid about the color prejudice of Indian community who live in South Africa. He is not hesitant or apologetic to brand Indians as racist. Let us take a listen to what he said.
Malema says there's a tendency among Indians to look down on Africans.
We must not forget for apartheid there was a hierarchy of oppression. Indians were better off than coloreds. Coloreds were better off than Africans. We were not oppressed the same. Our oppression was worse than the oppression of the Indians. That's why in the liberation movement, we used to say we are fighting to liberate blacks in general and Africans in particular. We must never apologize about that. Majority of Indians hate Africans. Majority of Indians are racist. And we must never be scared to say that. They are racist. I'm not saying all Indians. I'm saying majority of them. The same thing applies to some of the colored brothers. They see themselves as more white than being black. It's a reality we have to deal with.
Mr. Malema forcefully declares that Indian community living in South Africa are rabid racist. His statements have been criticized as expected. Truth behind his statement is undeniable. We have explained how racist Indians in India are right at the beginning of our presentation. As pointed out, there is clear indication how the Indian TV viewers are exposed 24/7 to the overt and covert conditioning to favor multinationals' interest that includes fondness for everything Anglo-American and disdain for everything indigenous, including dark skin. In this context, let's now refer to Mr. Malema, the popular international figure who has the moral obligation to take a stand against racial discrimination. I'm sure Mr. Malema understands that the international cartel is deeply involved in conducting and operating a racket designed to divide and condition people to discriminate, among other things, in the pretext of skin color. Mr. Malema's own supporters are not free from such conditioning either. Being an experienced and highly popular politician, he is aware of the diabolical plot of marketing white supremacy throughout the world, particularly the hidden agenda behind such marketing. After all, who benefits from diabolical plots of brewing strife among victims? Hence, the question to be posed is, where does the fault lie? Have the Indian community of South Africa or Indians in India suddenly woken up one fine morning and started to practice racism against South Africans and their fellow Indians? Is it an accident? Or is it a well-planned, well-designed, well-orchestrated plot to weaken the opponents of those who are benefactors of diabolical plot of conditioning masses for racial discrimination? The problem of racial discrimination is an international conspiracy which benefits those whose profession is to maximize profit by brewing conflicts throughout the world. It is said, since the last war, 280 armed conflicts have affected the world. Of that, 260 have been orchestrated by those who scare people of non-existent weapons of mass destruction. Wage armed conflict, maximize profit, benefactors move to the next project and make sure victims remain divided under all kinds of fictitious logic, one of which is racism. So where do we stand now? The workers and peasants community who are being crushed under the pressure of Western democracies, who do not realize that they are the most powerful in the nation. They are the most powerful community of the nation. That their ruling class is scared to death of their potential strength. The ruling class, to maintain status quo, will use racism card to weaken the community of peasants and the workers, so that one community can be tricked to fight another. The ghost of Macaulay seems to have returned to accomplish just that. Now we must wait and see if Anglo-American camp provides all-out support to the role of Mr. Malema. If yes, that will please the ghost of Macaulay, because of the prospect of success of his visionary strategy. On the other hand, if Anglo-American camp fiercely resist and opposes Mr. Malema, like how they react to China and Russia, that will mean Mr. Malema is on a path of historical crusade against racism for which the whole world is likely to revere and remember him for a long time to come. If you like what you see and hear, please subscribe and ring the bell.